Hey guys, this is Avilo. I want to make some videos just talking about, basically in this video I'm going to be talking about mech play and TVP and why it doesn't work, and regardless of what people say, I've heard the state of the game arguments. I actually watched the video of Day 9 and Artosis sort of going at it and in control of like whether mech is viable or not viable, and like having played mech quite a bit from beta up until, you know, retail, up until every patch has been nerfed, like I can like confidently say it's not viable right now, especially on pro level, but especially for many reasons. There's a lot of reasons. There's like 50 different reasons, but that's what this video is gonna be talking about: mech play TVP. How it's not viable right now, and how it could become viable with patching, but at this point it's sort of out of the player's hands, like on mech being viable in TVP. Like I heard the state of the game arguments where Artosis and Day 9 were sort of saying like people aren't good enough to be using mech, and it's not explored enough. And then I heard In Control's argument, he was basically of the stance that mech isn't good and it's not viable, and that the pros have already tried it and it doesn't work. And I actually agree with In Control. Funnily enough, like I pretty much agree with In Control's points and what he said, and like with the argument that it's not viable and the pros have tried it. It's not like the pros only have played bio and they decided that this is the way that they want to play, and that they weren't going to explore mech and do it. I think every pro Terran player, especially any Brood War players or anybody that followed Brood War, I'm pretty sure every Terran player has actually tried to make mech work at some point, or tried to do it. And it's not like they gave up after 5 games and said, oh, this doesn't work, I'm just going to go back and play bio. No, it's just really, really frustrating playing mech right now, because it's to the point where you have to, it's not even at the point, you could play like Flash and you'll still lose a mech TVP game, and there's a lot of reasons behind that, and I'm going to go into many of those. So, first of all, once again, the whole people didn't explore this. Players like me, Jinro, Goody, you know, there's Thorzane, like every good Terran player has explored mech TVP. They've had to have. There's no reason they haven't. But every good player has. The thing is, it's not easy to do. That's part of the Artosis and Day 9 argument, I guess. It's not easy to do, but the thing is, it's also not good to do. Like, whenever you do mech, the thing is, Protoss players that know how to abuse you, there's so many different ways to abuse you. And each of the ways is easy as fuck to do for the Protoss. There's mass blink stalker backstabs in your main. There's mass charge lot immortal, which you just 1A into the army. It doesn't matter if the tanks are sieged, you just 1A in. Trade your army and then remake it instantly. There's Colossus. Colossus actually are like a mobile siege tank that can walk up cliffs. Protoss actually has the siege tank in this game. It's the Colossus. What else is there? I mean, just the Immortal itself. You could go mass Immortals. Void Rays. And this is the point I'll get to in a second. I'm going to go back to Void Rays, but let's see, what else? You know, Stalker, Zealot, Immortal, Colossus. I said Charge Lot. What else is there? Templar, Psystorm, Archons is another. Basically, every single unit, even the Phoenix, can lift tanks and make your army obsolete. Every single Protoss unit, even the Probe, the Probe actually itself counters mech. And I know this sounds funny, but in StarCraft 1, one of the main ways to fight Protoss in PvT late game was using Arbiter recalls, multiple Arbiter recalls. You can do that with pylons in the late game, a 100 mineral building in the late game against Terran nowadays. Like, if they go mech, you scatter pylons on their half of the map. You just scatter pylons everywhere, and they'll never be able to take their side of the map comfortably. I've played, you know, I've had to have at least played 1,000 mech games by now overall in StarCraft 2, and like taking a 4th base against a really abusive Protoss that's doing Blink Stalker backstabs with Colossus, with having pylons on your side of the map. You can't be in 5 places at once with Mech. You can have a turret ring, but they can still break the turret ring with Blink Stalker Colossus. One Warp Prism will... A Warp Prism's like a 200 Mineral Arbiter, essentially. Oh, that's the other thing, a Warp Prism, like... So, Warp Prism, Pylon, Blink Stalker mobility, Charge Lots, everything counters Mech. And the thing is, Protoss can choose to do any of these, and what does the Terran have to do? Make more tanks, but everything counters the tank, so it's really difficult for Terran to take many bases when they're going Mech. Alright, and back to the Void Ray. This is also one of the crucial points of why Mech is really... It's not good that often in PvP. Like, just opening up Void Rays means that Terran has to have anti-air. You can't... There's no situation at all in PvP where you can go pure ground, pure Hellion tank, and get away with it, because the Protoss, if they make one Void Ray, you have to start making Thors, and if you start making Thors, guess what? They're gonna switch to pure Immortal, Charge Lot. Like, they're gonna make you make... They're basically making you stuff... Making you make stuff that you don't want to make. And also, that's the other point, the final point. And this actually goes for every Terran strategy in the matchup. If you're going Bio, Viking, Ghost, if you're going Mech, Vikings are useless supplied. Protoss loves it. They love it when you make Vikings. If you have 30 Vikings that are left after a battle, and you're both in a 200-200 situation, and Protoss trades with you, boom. Maybe they don't kill all your Vikings, but they're actually happy. They're a happy camper. Because you have like 10, 20 leftover Vikings that are flying in there. Guess what? They just remax on pure Charge Lot Archon. You have to land everything. It dies. And it's sort of like this circular process that happens all over again. Now they have a pure ground army, and you have to make a pure ground army, so now they remake Colossus. You need to get Vikings up again. They're completely happy to trade with you, and if you have leftover Vikings, they remax on pure ground, you have to land them again, and it starts all over again. So, but that goes for Bio TVP, which is why, you know, the matchup is really Protoss favored in the late game right now, which is what a lot of people aren't telling you or posting on the forums because they don't want to appear as whiners, but it's really Protoss favored. But that's, especially for Mech, it's even worse, because if you lose your army one time, you're essentially fucked. You can't lose your army one time. So Protoss can spread you thin really easily. There's just so many things, like, and let's go over the so that's, I guess that's part of the in control argument right there, and I totally agree with that. There's so many ways to fuck up a Mech player, and Mech, if you guess wrong, if you don't scan, if you misjudge their army composition by a little bit, even a teensy bit, you get fucked over. So, I mean, you can say that for most matchups, but in Mech versus Protoss, it's really, really, really bad. So, alright, let's go into the next thing here, which is the other half of the argument, which is that Mech is unexplored, and that that people aren't good enough to do Mech. It's not at all true. There's so many good players, and I mean, look at all the Korean pros. They're all playing Bio for a reason. They didn't all just not try Mech and say, "Oh, this is not good. We're not going to do it." No, they tried it, and they found out that it sucks. It was actually, the thing is, that's the Artosis argument. He was saying that people aren't good enough to use Mech, and that when people figure it out, it's going to be good. No, it's not. It's actually every Mech player, every Terran player that's extensively worked through Mech openings and Mech. Well, the thing is, you can't even open Mech. You have to open like other openings into Mech because of what I said before. Void Rays fuck you over. Like you can't just go straight Mech, because regardless of what you do, you either have to have Ghost with it for Immortals, or you have to have Mass Vikings for Colossus. So you can't ever go pure Mech. We didn't have that problem in Brood War because Goliaths were really, really good. If someone like built Scouts or something, or like something like, well, you would never build Scouts anyways, but let's just say Scouts were like Void Rays. If somebody did that, you would have the Goliath to fall back on, and the Goliath was really good on the ground too. It had a decent ground weapon, unlike the Viking, which is terrible on the ground. Like, maybe they should give it some armor upgrade on the ground or something, but, well, I'm going to go into what they can patch later, but the Vikings are terrible on the ground, and that's the huge thing. There's no Goliath. We don't have the Goliath, so I mean, so back to the Artosis argument of people being good enough. There's so many good players. They've all tried Mech. It doesn't work. Bio is like 10 times. Bio gives you a chance to win. Banshees give you a chance to win. 111 gives you a chance to win against Protoss by, you know, gimping them or doing damage to them. Mech does not work. Now let's go to the day 9 part that is unexplored. It's been very explored by a lot of players. It's just that, like I said, like it's to the point where you can play Mech against a Protoss player that's much worse than you, and you'll end up losing because they can do anything they want. You can play Bio against that same Protoss player, and you'll actually be able to possibly kill them or have a chance in the game because Bio is just so much more flexible. You don't have to... Marines are good, like they're anti-air. You have that anti-air base, so if somebody goes for like Void Rays or something, you don't have to have a minimum number of Vikings to survive. You have Marines that are your base units for anti-air, and you can include Vikings, but you still have a ground army that's flexible and that you can spread out over the map in multiple places. Whereas with Mech, you can't do that, and the Vikings make it so you can't go pure Mech. If the Viking was a Goliath, then I would completely agree. Mech would be much more viable. And so let's go into the other part of that it's not explored enough. Mech has already been explored to the point that it was viable before. Mech was very, very viable. Blizzard actually nerfed Mech every single patch. Maybe not every single patch, but virtually every single patch. Blizzard actually purposely nerfed Mech so that it wasn't good. They nerfed Mech after Thorzane versus MC. One series of games, they nerfed the Thor, and they changed it back so that it had energy after one series. It took Infestors like 4 months to be nerfed, which is really, like, it just shows Blizzard's bias right now against wanting you to build siege tanks in the TVP matchup. They don't want you to go Mech. They've done everything in their power to change it so that you build more Marauders, you build more Marines, and that's all you're going to do in the matchup. There's not going to be positional play. There's not going to be anything. They don't want you to do that. They nerf... First of all, the first nail in the coffin was they nerfed the tank damage. Tanks used to be able to kill stuff before it closed in. You'd have, your tanks, they're all fucking sieged. Like, you'd have that huge... You'd have that Brood War base army. If stuff came in and you were already sieged, a lot of it would vaporize before it got into position. The Protoss would have to play smart to be able to beat you. They'd have to use warp prisms. They'd have to do backstabs. They'd have to do stuff other than just walk into your army. But when they did two things that changed this drastically. Three things. A, they changed the Zealot armor type, I believe, to light or something, so that it would take one extra tank shot to kill Zealots. B, they changed the tank damage to not do as much to overall all units. They changed it to do damage more versus armored. And 3, they changed the way EMP works so that it only reduces 100 shields. You used to be able to go Ghost Mech, and EMPs plus tank splash damage plus Hellion splash damage would make you have a really cost-effective and viable Mech army. But they nerfed each one of those things, and so suddenly let's say these are all Zealots. Suddenly, some of the Zealots that would have died and vaporized here, leaving over some army, suddenly it's like this. They get all the way in here, and suddenly you're never, ever, ever going to again trade cost effectively with Protoss army. Even if they kill half your army right here, they instantly will remax with gateways because Protoss units build instantly from a gateway anywhere on the map. So now you have a situation where instead of being able to have this solid army that you could play into a late game macro scenario, you cannot do that anymore because you lose in every engagement. You're never trading cost effectively because of the nerfs to Mech. The nerf to the siege tank, basically. The nerf to the buff to Zealots in their armor type. And so that's not all they nerfed. They nerfed the Hellion in a recent patch, so it does less damage. They did it so it doesn't do as much damage against workers, which I'm not sure why they did that. I mean, I guess they wanted TBT to not be so much mech-based with Hellions, but Marines do the same thing. You can drop 8 Marines in Mineral Line, and you're gonna be guaranteed to kill a lot of workers. It was the same thing with Hellions. It's just something they don't like that Mech They don't like Terran players going mech for some reason. I'm trying to think what other... they nerfed the Viking in patches previously. Its ground mode used to be a lot more powerful. They nerfed it because of, I think TVZ builds, which makes no sense. A lot of these nerfs were in beta and like a little bit after retail, when they still had horrible maps in the map pool, like Steps of War and Scrap Station, like these horribly imbalanced maps, and they're making balance changes on these just terrible maps that no tournament's gonna keep in their map pool forever. Let me see what else here. We have the Thor, the energy upgrade. Like I said, they nerfed it after one series. They didn't want people making Thors in TVP apparently. Strike cannon. They've never done anything. All right, so I think that basically covers like. So it's not just that the players haven't explored it. It's that Blizzard has actively, purposely nerfed it each patch because they want you to make more Marauders, more Marines. And now they're fixing their stuff in Heart of the Swarm. But so now I'm gonna get into what they can change to help make Mech viable. If they really wanted to make Mech a viable TVP option, here's some things that could change. In general, Vikings in ground mode. This actually goes for all matchups. Make Vikings in ground mode not so much trash. You shouldn't be able to get into a situation where you have 20 Vikings in the air because your opponent forced you into making Vikings with Broodlords or whatever, and then they switch into a full ground composition with 5,000 larvae or 5,000 gateways in 200 situations, and then your Vikings are utterly useless. They should at least be decent on the ground. Right now they're not. They fucking suck. So that would go across the board, but mainly Mech TVP, like Vikings need to not be so shitty. Another thing, what was I gonna get to? Thor's strike cannon. You know, make that 75 energy. Give it a slower animation. And I'm saying 75 energy, but also tone down the damage or something. Like, maybe just make it a stun lock, or I don't know, but do something with the strike cannon. No one researches this upgrade for a good reason. It's the worst upgrade in the game. Like, there's only 2 uses for the strike cannon that I found out, and that's in TVT, and that's to strike cannon your opponent's Thors in late game scenarios. That's actually one of the only scenarios you'll ever research that upgrade, is to strike cannon your opponent's Thors, which is a TVT thing. Let's see, what else here? Hellions. Why you fix them? You turn them to shit. One of the only ways Mech had against Protoss, that Mech had going for it, was Hellion harass. You could actually reduce your opponent's worker count so they wouldn't just be able to build up a massive ball and take like 5 bases without being punished. Like, you can never attack with Mech, so now Protoss are happy as hell. They don't even have to worry about Hellion harass anymore. And I understand that was a TVT change they mainly did, but like, I don't know. So what's the next thing? Siege tank damage. Fix it. Fix it in some way that it doesn't affect TVZ, so that tanks don't just rape Banelings and Zerglings like hardcore. And fix it so that in TVT tanks won't, so that Mech won't only be the only playable thing. I mean, really, the damage before was fine. It's just that the other races weren't developed in their strategies, and like the maps were so small that having that 75 Brood War damage really fucked things up on Steps of War when you were just like 3 screens away from your opponent and you could just leapfrog there in 2 sieges. What else here? Oh, this is a big one that I think would actually, make Mech viable, is the armories. It takes so much gas to get Mech upgrades. That's another thing. Protoss, in general, in TVP Mech, they can go crazy on the upgrades, which are even cheaper now, which was a mistake as well, but I don't want to go into that. But, reducing the armory cost to 50 gas, that's something across the board that makes Mech more playable. Does it imbalance Mech? No, I don't think that would imbalance Mech at all. That would just make it more accessible, and the players that choose to go Mech, well, they would have more access to it. They would still have to control their units. Everything unit-wise, everything in every matchup would remain the same. It's just that you make Mech more accessible to everybody, sort of like Bio is. Like, what else here? What are other ways that you could you could fix Mech TVP. A lot of the things they're addressing in Heart of the Swarm right now, like they're adding the Battle Hell in, so Zealot Charge Lot remaxes don't instantly rape you. The Warhound is basically a Mech Marauder. I don't really like that, and I don't think it'll make it through. Really, we need a Goliath. Like, see, the Viking is like a horrible replacement for the Goliath because, like I said, if you're left over with 10, 15 Vikings after a battle, those are dead supply in a 200 versus 200 like bankroll situation where you're both sitting on a bankroll. All those Vikings are dead supply. Your opponent will just remax on pure Zealot, Archon, Templar, and your Vikings are utterly useless. So you have to land them, they all die anyways, and then your opponent makes Colossus again. So, whatever you do, Protoss will have the advantage in that scenario. They'll always have the advantage. So make Vikings not as bad, or, you know, add in the Goliath. And that's the other thing, I didn't mention, carriers actually counter Mech as well. And Thors are not good against carriers, so that's another Protoss thing that forces you to make Vikings. They lose all the carriers, they remax on the pure ground, you have to land them, you lose all the Vikings, and suddenly they're at the advantage again, so really, Mech right now, like, I've been trying it out again, re-exploring it, and all I found is all that I found is frustration once again, and come to the conclusion that it's not viable. It's just not. There's too many ways to take advantage of a Mech player that you can't do when the player's going Bio, Viking, Ghost. Bio, Viking, Ghost, Nuke, you know, it's so much better than, you know, a Mech Turtle, because the Protoss can take so many bases. It's too abusable right now. You can't Hellion harass as easily, you can't. Tanks, that's the thing, tanks in a macro game, they're bad. So, I'm sort of just restating stuff now, so I think this will be near the end of the video, but so really, if people want Mech to be a viable playstyle, it's not on the players anymore to make it viable. We've done our part, we've done our research, we've done the playthrough of, you know, the hundreds, the thousands of Mech games. I mean, I guess that's the Artosis argument and Day 9's argument that it hasn't been explored enough, but I'm pretty sure collectively the Mech players have done their research and they've done it, and the pro Koreans especially, and it's just not good. And this is coming from somebody that loves to play Mech in TVZ and TVT where it is viable right now. And I tried, and like I keep going back to it every now and then in TVP, and it turns out I have more success with playing Bio, Viking, Ghost, Nuke, which is a style in general that I'm actually less comfortable playing aggressive in any matchup. Yet I'm more successful playing Marauder, Marine, Ghost, Nuke, Viking than I am with a passive Mech style, because tanks are bad. Like, they killed Mech. So I mean, to end this video, what I'm gonna say here is it's up to Blizzard right now to do those tiny balance tweaks, to tweak Mech without making it imbalanced, without making it take over every matchup, to give Terran players the option to go Mech or to go Bio or to even mix them both. And, you know, those changes I suggested, like, they need to look at the tank damage again. They need to fix it. You shouldn't have a 200 army that's already sieged, already in position, that gets obliterated by a Protoss 1Aing into you. Even if you get off perfect EMPs, they still kill you every single time. That should not happen. In Brood War, if you were pre-sieged, a Protoss that walked into your army, you would always trade cost effectively there as a Terran player, especially with Spider Mines, like, every single time. Protoss would have to do stuff like recall, stasis field, like, carriers, like, they would do stuff to reduce your Mech count and then overwhelm your army, which took a lot of skill and precision to do. The stuff in StarCraft 2 takes 0 skill, 0 precision. It's just 1A, make a ball. Your opponent is a Mech player, they're at a disadvantage, you come out ahead just because they chose to play Mech and because Blizzard nerfed it. So, to end it, once again, reduce the armory price to 50, something like that, you know, would make Mech more accessible. It wouldn't make it overpowered because it doesn't directly affect Mech units. You know, that would be a nice change that I think would make it more accessible. You know, take a look at the tank damage, reevaluate the Hellion, because right now, in TVZ it's good for harassment. TVT, it's sort of okay. It's not as good as it was before, but in TvP, it's absolute trash for harassment now. And, you know, take a look at Vikings. There's so many things that can be looked at for Mech. Reduce sensor tower price. I don't know, that could be something. Like, they need to look at the things that make Mech good and, like, maybe make sensor towers 50 gas. That makes Mech better. Indirectly. It doesn't actually affect the actual units. It makes it so that you have a sensor tower that's more accessible if you want to make one, so that way you can get your army into position. We don't have spider mines, so we have to rely, as a Mech player in any matchup, you have to rely on the sensor tower quite a bit to give you that time to move into position. So maybe make it 50 gas, 75 gas, I don't know, but they should be, if they want to make Mech viable and they're actually legitimately looking at it, why are they not looking at these things? Like, they could have done this months ago to make it viable in TvP, to make it more viable. And I'm glad that they're doing it at Heart of the Swarm. I cannot wait for the Battle Hellion. The Warhound doesn't really excite me. They need to look at tank damage, but yeah, I mean, that's about it. I guess that's my thoughts on Mech TvP and its viability. As of right now, it's not viable. It's not in the players' hands to make it viable. The players have done everything they can to make it viable. It's up to Blizzard now to actually, you know, fix what they destroyed. Mech used to be viable in beta. I used to go Ghost Mech every single game, even on large maps against Protoss, and I would be able to play in macro games. And no, I didn't win every game, but I would win a lot of really good games that felt exactly like Brood War TvP Mech with Ghost Mech, you know, because tanks could kill stuff, Ghosts could actually EMP shit, and yeah, I mean, so, you know, it needs to go. They killed Mech. They need to. It's at the point where they need to do something to bring it back in TvP. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll be posting more videos, more of my thoughts, strategy, perhaps theory. But yeah, that's Mech TvP. Sadly, right now that's my crying face. It's not viable, but you know, it's up to Blizzard. That's all I'm gonna say. I think most TvP players that have explored Mech would actually agree with me right now. So yeah, thank you for watching. Peace.